dans les milieux nomades, l'eau est une ressource qui n'est pas abondante. Que l'eau vient avant le lait. L'eau, c'est la vie. Le lait, c'est la nourriture.
The dry season in the Timbuktu area is a real test of human endurance. In February or March, the small wells in the area start to dry out. For the Tuareg nomads, this means that they again have to move to find water elsewhere. The Timbuktu region is situated in northern Mali and is part of the Sahel, the large dry savanna zone south of the Sahara. Despite the fact that most of the year not a drop of rain falls, local people manage to survive in this marginal environment. While fishermen and sedentary farmers make a living along the Niger River, the great pastures in the Sahel are the main source of livelihood for the Tuareg, a people who live as nomads. Over the centuries, they have adapted to this environment, where the only certainty is uncertainty. And it is not only the climate which makes life hard. People also have to cope with political constraints. Traditionally, the Tuareg have not cared about international borders. This creates problems for a modern state. Through the years, the Tuareg have been accused of over-exploiting nature and of causing desertification, a myth which still has a strong standing in international environmental debates. Since colonial times, the authorities have aimed at settling nomadic people in order to better control them. This wish to control nomads has initiated several rebellions. The last Tuareg rebellion started in 1990, a few years after the Great Sahelian Drought. The government's military reaction led most of the civilian Tuareg population to flee to neighboring countries.
Quand la paix est revenue, le gouvernement malien nous a demandé quel site choisissons-nous pour le retour. Et nous avions choisi ces sites où vous êtes actuellement, qui avaient beaucoup de pâturages, mais qui n'avaient pas d'eau. Et nous savions à l'avance qu'il y avait de grandes potentialités d'eau souterraine. Bon, après un an d'attente quand même, le HCR a fini par installer un système solaire qui nous donne de l'eau, mais nettement insuffisante pour l'ensemble des communautés qui sont estimées à peu près à 2000 personnes.
Livestock are at the center of the daily life of the Tuareg. Livestock make up their capital, and during a large part of the year, milk is the main source of nutrition. And since water is a scarce resource, it has to be carefully managed. The smallest animals drink first, then the larger ones, and finally people may drink. Governments tend to think that nomads have too many animals and regularly accuse them of overgrazing. But to survive as a nomad, it is essential to have a certain number of animals and different types of animals, both to increase food security and because every type of animal has its own function.
Les nomades multiplient les animaux en faisant des petits ruminants tels que les chèvres et les moutons. Ils font l'espèce monture, c'est-à-dire qu'ils utilisent pour les déplacements et pour les moyens de déplacement, les ânes et les chameaux. Il y a les vaches qu'ils utilisent comme presque une nourriture. C'est des vaches que le nomade a le maximum de lait dont il a besoin. Et en plus, le maximum d'argent qu'il lui faudra chaque fois pour s'approvisionner pendant les saisons où il n'y a pas de lait.
nomads may have survived on milk the whole year, but sooner or later in the dry season, the cows cannot provide enough milk. At this point, millet takes over as the main source of sustenance. The social hierarchy determines people's functions in the camp. The bellas are found at the bottom of the social order and carry out most of the work. The bellas are descendants of slaves who were captured by the Tuareg. During the last 100 years, slavery has gradually ended. The bellas still work for wealthier Tuareg, but today they are paid, either in cash or in kind. Above the bellas in the hierarchy, the artisans make most of the tools needed in a nomadic camp. The Tuareg are known for producing original leather products and jewelry, and the sale of these products represents a small but important additional income. While women work with soft materials, men work with wood and metal. Ag Mahmud leads the evening prayer and belongs to the upper class in his group. Traditionally, people in this class have been specialists in the Quran, but today they take care of cultural tradition in a wider sense.
Allah.
A few kilometers from the main camp, there are several smaller camps of herders. Ag Mahmud hires some of these herders to take care of his livestock. Once in a while he goes to pay them a visit and to tell them where and when to move to next.
ايوه كنت سنة اجيجي وهيني كنت كركري
يا والله
هذه اكلين نسكب دي نجار دراس ايوه كان دي ودت نهايه كده نهايه تالنت وتاني ضي سهرت تالي موست النتي لما ياض الدهوس كيت اجار بوفت
هاي
او يا توالى او يا وهاص انت على والله
على رقها
ايوه خلاص. Pour les Touaregs, se déplacer est un besoin inéluctable. Son plancher est le sable fin du désert. Son toit est le ciel étoilé. Il préfère sa tente ouverte à tous les vents, chaude la journée, froide la nuit. Il est fier, comme un roi dans son palais, et ne craint personne quand il est armé.
When nomads move on, they may appear to be leaving a desert in their wake. In the middle of the 1980s, the rains failed several years in a row and caused the greatest famine in the Sahel in modern times. The international community contributed with food aid, and the UN commissioned reports on the extent of desertification and projects to halt it. Despite substantial research concluding that local resource use does not cause desertification, the UN is immovable.
Desertification is really the loss of the fertility of soil. And we have seen this in the Sahel. We have seen the encroachment of this degradation taking place day in, day out. And in a country like Mauritania, people say that the desert is advancing at the pace of 8 kilometers per year.
I think the research tells us that the word desertification is not a useful word. It's misleading because people believe that it means degradation towards a condition which resembles that of a desert. We now know very clearly that for tens of thousands of years the southern edges of the Sahara have been subject to climatic oscillations. I've spent about 30 years mostly working in Nigeria, in the far north, but also in Niger and in Kenya. And the first thing that I've learnt is that the people who live in these dangerous environments have huge resources of resilience to overcome the obstacles they face. They are used to variability in rainfall and sometimes also variability in the political conditions and the economic conditions of their lives. Unpredictable variability over which they have no control. And they're able to handle these, and that's the first lesson we have to get hold of because it's not always understood internationally.
We are expecting about 169 countries to join Brazil to talk about desertification, what is being done and what can be done, because worldwide desertification is advancing at the pace of 10 million hectares every year. So deserts are moving. It is creating an economic and social problem to the countries which are affected, and this is also affecting the overall global environment.
Et le fait que le gouvernement du Mali demande à ce que les partenaires bilatéraux ou multilatéraux l'appuient pour qu'ils trouvent une solution au problème de la désertification, ça veut dire que le phénomène est reconnu par le gouvernement du Mali, et ça veut dire qu'il y a des preuves que le phénomène de désertification est là. Alors donc c'est pour cette raison d'ailleurs qu'au Mali, il y a un vaste programme de fixation des dunes pour protéger le fleuve contre l'ensablement et pour protéger aussi toutes les exploitations agricoles qui sont là. Parce que si on ne prend garde, et toutes ces terres de culture vont être ensevelies par le sable.
La désertisation, c'est l'avancée des sables du désert, alors que la désertification est un phénomène pratiquement lié à l'homme et aux animaux. C'est-à-dire c'est la transformation des zones de végétation abondante en zones sahéliennes et en zones désertiques.
The sand dune project is large and extremely expensive. Despite the fact that the Timbuktu region lacks schools and health clinics, Mali receives millions of dollars every year to stabilize sand dunes. One researcher who has studied vegetation dynamics in the Sahel for more than 20 years is critical of this type of project.
Je pense que dans certains cas bien précis, lorsqu'il s'agit de protéger un ouvrage, lorsqu'il s'agit de protéger de l'ensablement une route, un pont ou un bâtiment, je pense que dans certains cas, effectivement, ces méthodes sont utiles. Mais dans l'immense majorité des cas au Sahel, il est tout à fait irréaliste d'envisager une fixation des dunes généralisée sur des kilomètres carrés, alors que la végétation naturelle peut le faire.
Wow, ça a changé, hein?
Beginning in the drought year 1984, the ecologist Pierre Iernot has monitored the vegetation in the Timbuktu region.
Okay.
While most of the studies to monitor vegetation are based on satellite images with low resolution, Iernot's research is carried out on the ground. His detailed studies give an image which contrasts to the one given by the UN and the Malian authorities.
Même si certains sites sont complètement dénudés suite à de mauvaises pluies, il suffisait d'avoir une série d'années moyennes ou d'années de bonnes pluies pour que la végétation naturelle, sans autre intervention, récupère le terrain laissé à l'érosion éolienne et qu'il y ait une stabilisation de la dune. L'observation de la végétation sur différents sites, en particulier des sites qui sont soumis à des pressions de pâture différentes, ces sites ont une végétation différente du fait de la pression de pâture et ont une sensibilité au climat qui est aussi différente.
Also, dry vegetation is useful. Dry trees are the main source of energy consumed by households in this area. Dry wood is also sold on the market and represents an important additional income for some. But wood is also a literally burning issue. Even if local people only collect dry wood and the use of the fuel wood does not represent a threat to the environment, the government still continues to fine poor women who carry out this work. Many state-employed foresters have used the myth about desertification and their formal positions to enrich themselves. The idea of desertification was created early in the colonial period, when the European authorities needed a story to justify putting people and land under administration.
The narratives have both winners and losers. The winners are national governments, UN bureaucracies, particularly in the United Nations Environment Programme, certain researchers, particularly people who were developing remote sensing technologies, very expensive remote sensing technologies in the 1970s and 1980s, and needed a big story to justify that. And the losers from these narratives are, of course, the herders and the farmers in marginal dry areas who have seen increased intervention by state creating state reserves of land and regulating how users can use land. Well, the consequences for pastoralists of this policy have been a rapidly increasing marginalization, political, social and economic marginalization of pastoral societies.
The market in Gossi village is one of the largest in the Timbuktu region. Prices for livestock are a good measure of whether people are facing good or hard times. In years of drought, when nomads see that there will not be sufficient pastures available to carry all the livestock through the dry season, they sell animals to buy grain. And when many do this simultaneously, livestock prices drop, while prices for grain increase correspondingly. The livestock production of the nomads is not only important for the local economy, but it also contributes substantially to the national economy. Livestock is Mali's third most important export product after gold and cotton. The end of the dry season is approaching in the Sahel. In June, the freshness of the first rains is expected. When the rains eventually arrive, the whole Sahelian landscape changes radically. What has looked like a burnt and sterile desert landscape is suddenly changed into a green and lush savanna. For the nomads, this is the good season with little work and lots of milk. The animals are in a good condition, milk is plentiful, and life is good. But the Bellas also work hard in the rainy season. In the main camp, relatives are visiting, and Ag Mahmoud's wife, Zaina, prepares a party. Some of their daughters and grandchildren living in the city have come to visit to enjoy nomadic life in the rainy season, and that has to be celebrated. On such occasions, meat is served, an uncommon event among nomads. Ag Mahmoud knows that the Tuareg still face great challenges in their encounters with modern society. But even if his people are being marginalized by the government, he has no plans of giving up life as a nomad. Nomadic life still represents the most appropriate use of the large Sahelian savannas. For centuries, his people have adapted to the unstable environment in this area, and Ag Mahmoud believes that also in the future, the nomads can continue to manage this environment successfully.
Pour sécuriser leur avenir, je pense que les nomades doivent accepter stoïquement les changements qui s'imposent. Ils doivent faire en sorte, l'État aidant, qu'ils accèdent à la lecture du monde par l'instruction, par la communication, et accepter, une fois instruits, de s'adapter aux nouvelles situations. Je ne dis pas qu'ils doivent renoncer à leur identité culturelle, mais qu'ils doivent essayer d'adapter autant que possible cette identité culturelle et les modes de vie aux changements qui s'imposent. Le plus grand souci, c'est pour mes enfants et mes petits-enfants. Parce que je vois, comme je vois la vie maintenant, là, elle va trop vite, et trop dur.
bibinda kore tabaya ganjinda koira tabaya halisa de go yo tange yer kurya der goga ta go yo yamatimenda go der goga goyo yamatimenda gomi